living my dream job. I always wanted to do something creative. I'm management, I'm marketing, I'm admin.
Hello and welcome to This is Autism, the podcast from the North East Autism Society. My name is Kerrie Highcock and I'm the Family Development Manager at the charity. Employment is a big issue for the neurodivergent community. Only 3 in 10 autistic people are in employment, and one-size-fits-all hiring practice, lack of support at work can be a barrier to many people. But there is another way. Being self-employed can mean more flexibility and organising your work to fit around you. I'm delighted today to welcome Lauren Osbourne, an illustrator and author who has been self-employed since she graduated in 2022. Lauren already has 3 books under her belt, including one she wrote herself, It's Okay to Be Me, which is based on her experiences as a young girl before her autism diagnosis at the age of 10. So we're going to be talking about Lauren's work, her inspiration, and the joys and challenges of being your own boss. So hi, Lauren.
Hello.
It's lovely to have you here. Can you just jump straight in and tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, of course. So a little bit about me. I'm 25 years old. I'm from South Shields. I've lived here my entire life. And I was diagnosed as being autistic when I was 10 years old. I went to University of Sunderland and I graduated with my bachelor's degree and my master's degree in illustration. I am an author and illustrator. I have illustrated 6 children's books now. And I have written and illustrated my very own as well, which is It's Okay to Be Me. And I'm currently working on books 7 and 8.
Wow, that's brilliant. So we had it down as 3, but you've actually done many more.
I've done a few more, yeah, since I last spoke to you guys. It's been full of busy, as usual.
So your latest book, Lauren, It's Okay to Be Me, which I have seen. I've got a copy. It's incredible. Can you tell us a little bit about what was the aim of this book and where did the inspiration come from?
So for me, when I first got my diagnosis at 10, and bear in mind, this is only 15 years ago, so not that long ago in the grand scheme of things, there wasn't anything out there that I can remember that I could look at and go, it's all right for me to be myself. When I was kind of like growing up, there wasn't a lot of media, there wasn't a lot of books. Both my parents, who, bear in mind, were NHS nurses, they had no clue what autism was or what that meant for me and my future. So they were completely left in the dark. So when I got my diagnosis, it was very much a case of, here's the piece of paper, off you go. So there was no tools really for them or for me to kind of come to terms with what this diagnosis meant for myself. And something that I realized when I was in university was there still isn't a whole lot of media out there written not only for autistic people, but by autistic people as well. And that to me is the key. Why should autistic voices not be represented properly? You know, it's all fair and well writing something for autistic people, but if you yourself aren't autistic, there's only so much that you can bring to that, to the table. So the real reason I wanted to write it was so that my experiences and story was out there. But also so I could try and help other people who are going through similar things that I had already gone through.
And what has the response been, Lauren, from the group? What have people, have people got back in touch with you and told you how it's helped them?
Yeah, honestly, the response to the book has been incredible. I didn't think it would have as big an impact as it has, but it really has. And I'm absolutely blown away by that. I've had a few parents get back in touch with us. There was this one mum who got in touch with us and actually sent us a video of a little girl reading the book and just expressing how thankful she was that this is out there and that her daughter has something that she can relate to and that she absolutely loves. And honestly, that kind of like, that really just choked us up in that moment, because it was like, oh my God, I've made such a difference, and I didn't even realize that I was doing that for this young girl. So, yeah, the feedback has been absolutely incredible. I'm absolutely blown away by it.
That's brilliant. And obviously, I know one of your main roles is as an illustrator, and your illustrations are wonderful and so very creative and so detailed. Where does your inspiration come from, Lauren, for a lot of your work that you do?
So a lot of my work you'll find is kind of based on stories that already exist. So one of the things that I did for university was for my final project in my bachelor's, I had to take some stories that already existed and kind of do my own take on what those illustrations should look like. So the two stories I chose were Little Red Riding Hood and Alice in Wonderland. And I loved how spooky and dark I could make not Alice in Wonderland, how spooky and dark I could make Little Red Riding Hood. But I could also make Alice in Wonderland really creative and just kind of like full of wonder and stuff, because that's entirely the point of the story. But a lot of my inspirations come from classic fairy tales, stories that already exist, stories people grew up with.
And I think as well, Lauren, you really challenge that. There's, the big misconception that we have that autistic people are not creative, which is clearly inaccurate in every way, isn't it? I think neurodivergent people actually often are more creative than non-autistic people. Would you kind of agree with that?
Yeah, I think, autistic people, so many of us have wild, vivid imaginations. I've always kind of struggled when people say autistic people lack imagination, because if anything, I've got too much of it. If I didn't have imagination, I wouldn't be doing the job that I'm doing. I think that that mindset just comes and is perpetuated by so many stereotypes that we see in the media. Not only lacking creative imagination, but also social imagination is such a big stereotype that many people who are autistic don't always experience. I think it's quite sad that people still have this very backwards view on the autistic experience, because we're not robots. We see things and do things a little bit differently, but as far as imagination goes, yeah, we definitely have it.
Absolutely, million percent. So what job roles have you had in the past, Lauren, before you became self-employed?
So one of the job roles I had was a support and development mentor. And I absolutely loved that. I really enjoyed working with the different people that I did. But for me, it was getting to a point where my mental health was just being negatively affected. And I made the decision for myself that I just need to bite the bullet and go full-time self-employed. Because at that point, I essentially had two jobs. I was not only doing a job for someone else, but I was also working for myself. So I was having to meet deadlines on two separate jobs. It meant that I was extra stressed out because, again, I'm having to meet separate deadlines for separate projects, and it was very, very overwhelming. And it got to the point where I actually experienced autistic burnout, which anyone who's experienced that will know how dangerous and just how awful that is. I was exhausted. I didn't have the energy to go out and do anything. I was so emotional at that point as well. It was in December, and I just couldn't bring myself to do stuff that I normally would. So it really just affected me mental health, definitely at the very end. Um, you know, but I'm glad that I've had that experience of being able to work for someone else. For the longest time when I was younger, I was terrified of going out into the world and finding myself a job. I was always a bit apprehensive about how I would do that, what that would look like, where I would work. The worst idea in my mind would be, going and getting some sort of retail job, because, every day is just so different and chaotic. I think at 16, I would not have been able to cope with it. So I'm grateful for the experience that I've been able to have from it, but it's definitely made me learn from that as well. Some of the things that I don't want to put up with, and some of the things that I found in the long run just weren't working for me.
So would you say, Lauren, that one of the reasons is because you're incredibly talented, but was one of the main reasons for becoming self-employed because of the negative effects on your mental health from having working for somebody else?
Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't all doom and gloom. Like I say, I absolutely loved the job. I really enjoyed working with certain colleagues and being with the members. They were great, honestly. When they got something right and they did it themselves, it was almost like being a proud parent. You were just like, yes, I am so happy you've managed to do this. This is amazing. Look how far you've come. But in the long run, it was just too much. I had too much on my plate. Again, it was 2 jobs. I had a job where it was basically a 9 to 5. I would get up, I would go to work 4 days of the week. And then the other 3 days of the week, I had me illustration jobs, because, sometimes at this other job, I wouldn't get home until 6, 7 o'clock at night. And, that's from starting at like 9:30, 10 o'clock some days. So by the time I get home, I've had me dinner. There's not very much time for me to, 1, have time for myself, but 2, do my illustration work. So it was a massive detriment to me.
And I guess the slightly different topic, but it does link in around masking. Obviously, did you feel you had to mask more in the job with people, the job that you where you weren't self-employed, whereas maybe when you're self-employed, you could be more authentically you, perhaps? Did you see a...
Yeah, definitely. I think the masking came from the fact that my job role was to support others with additional needs, which was great because obviously I'm autistic myself. I know what that's like. But when you're a member of staff, it was more of a, I can't show how I'm actually feeling, because then that's going to have a negative impact on these guys. So a lot of that did mean that I had to mask quite a lot. And I think the masking ultimately is what led to the burnout, because I was having to pretend and wear that mask on almost a daily basis. And again, as much as I loved the job, it was definitely getting to the point where the mask was slipping. I ended up having a few panic attacks and stuff like that. And obviously that was something where I would have to hide that as well, because if the group saw us having a panic attack, they're going to be panicking. What's wrong with Lauren? Why is Lauren doing that? Oh my God, what's happening to Lauren? So, it was another thing where I would have to hide that. So yeah, it was a really difficult time. Absolutely.
I think what we'll do, Lauren, is we'll take a break there, and then after the break, we're going to have a little bit of a chat around the joys of being self-employed as an autistic person and what your plans are for the future. Hi, while we're on a quick break, I thought I'd tell you a little bit more about the Family Development Service here at the North East Autism Society. The Family Development Services provides support for families pre, during and after diagnosis and includes a variety of services including our parent and toddler groups, autism hubs, workshops for families, a dedicated enquiry line and our resource site as well, which can be found at the family resource site on the North East Autism Society website. So if you go to www.ne-as.org.uk and go along to the family development site, you can find all the information there. Welcome back to This is Autism. We're discussing self-employment as an autistic person with the lovely Lauren Osbourne. So, Lauren, can you just tell us what is it? What are the joys of being self-employed as an autistic person?
So the joys for me is being able to have my own schedule and being able to work when I see fit. You know, the joys of being an illustrator is the fact that I can just sit down and I can just draw. I don't need to consult with anybody. I don't need to work out with management when would be an appropriate time to do this, that, and t'other, because I am management, I am the admin, I am marketing, I am the accountant. I have everything going on, which means I'm able to kind of like set my days on what tasks I'll be doing and when. So something that I've started doing is making a to-do list. I'm a very visual person, obviously, but I find that if I have a to-do list, it's much easier for me to see what it is that I need to do in my day to get everything done in time. So what I'll normally do, I normally start at like 9:30 in the morning when I'm at home in my studio. And I'd just like to spend a good 15 minutes having a look at all the different tasks that I need to do in a day. So it could be um, upload stories and stuff to Instagram and Facebook to let people know that I am still here and I'm still active. Showing people what I'm getting up to in the day, little snippets of me illustrations and stuff like that. But also it gives us an idea of how long each thing's going to take. So if I put down send emails to blah de blah, I know that for me, that's probably going to take 5-10 minutes, depending on how many emails there are. So that's something that I can do straight away and I can tick it off my list and I don't need to think about it for the rest of the day. So it's great that I'm able to just have me little lists of things to do so that I can get them done and not have to think about it after that. I love being able to do that. One of the other things I like as well is I can take a holiday whenever I please. I know people are like, oh, you need to be working, you need to be doing this, you need to be doing that. And it's like, yeah, that's great. But taking time for yourself as well is so, so, so important, especially when you're self-employed. Because as I said before, I'm management, I'm marketing, I'm admin, I'm social media, I'm the illustrator, I'm the author in some cases. So if I'm not taking a good amount of time for myself to just relax, recharge, think about my next move, then I'm not going to get anything done because I'm going to be too overwhelmed with everything that's kind of going on around me. But I absolutely love the fact that I can just wake up in the morning, pull on me comfy clothes, go make myself a coffee and come and sit at my desk and do all my illustrations because my office is literally next door to my bedroom. So it is a dream. Easiest commute ever.
That's amazing. And is there something, Lauren, about, that kind of monotropic thinking as well, being able to get really, deep into something without people bothering you? Do you find that a benefit?
I find that a massive benefit. Hyperfocus is one of the reasons why I'm able to get so much detail into my illustrations because once I've sat down, I've put my headphones in and I'm away. You're not getting me to move for anything after that. I love the fact that I can just sit down for hours on end and just kind of like disassociate from the world because for me, that means I can get so much done in that time. And some people might think that as a negative thing, being able to just disassociate from everyone and ignore all other things. But for me, I think that's great because I'm able to get so much done because of that. So absolutely, I love being able to do that. It's great.
So does being self-employed as an autistic person come with any challenges then, Lauren?
Yeah, it absolutely does. Some days it's just very much a case of I can't be bothered with this. Like most people, regardless of whether you're self-employed or not, I think we all have those days where it's I really can't be bothered. Or, you wake up on Monday and you think, oh, this again. You know, it's one of those things where I think everyone experiences a little bit of I don't want to be bothering with work today. But for me being self-employed, I don't necessarily always have that benefit of not being able to go into work, because if I'm not going into work, I'm not making a living, because, there's no such thing as sick days for me. There's no such thing as paid holidays for me. If I'm not working, I'm not earning, which is the reality of it. I think one of the other things that I kind of struggle with sometimes, again, it's a masking thing. I do loads of markets and I do loads of in-person events as well. So a lot of the time I will have to put on a mask, not because I'm intentionally trying to mask my autistic self, but in some situations it just feels unavoidable. If I'm doing a market, for example, I'm selling my work. I'm trying to push my work out there. I'm trying to get people to know who I am. So that requires me talking to everybody. Anyone who will listen to me, I will be talking to them. But that leaves me so peopled out at the end of the day, is the best way I can describe it. And it's not really an overwhelming kind of feeling. It's more of an exhaustion, like an emotional fatigue. So yeah, there's definitely some negative things that can come from it, but I wouldn't trade those negatives for anything, because I'm living my dream job, essentially. When I was a kid, I always wanted to do something creative. I had friends who were like, "Oh, I want to be a nurse," or I want to join the police when I'm older," or "Oh, I want to go into the army." And for me, it was always, I want to draw. I want to do something creative. I want to, I went through stages of, "Oh, I want to be a fashion designer," and then it was, "Oh, I want to be I want to be an art teacher." But it was always something around art. So the fact that I'm able to be a children's book illustrator is just an absolute dream come true.
Absolutely. So in terms of employers and employment for autistic and neurodivergent people, what do you think employers should do better, Lauren, when it comes to supporting neurodivergent folk?
I think when it comes to people who are employing neurodiverse people, and specifically autistic people, I think people need to start listening to the actual autistic people, instead of assuming what it is that we need, or assuming it is that we want, and allowing us to express for ourselves what we think would be best for that situation. Many people don't seem to understand that many autistic people struggle with processing time. So for me, especially, I could be having a conversation with you, and you could have said something, and I'll just immediately agree to it, because it's kind of like word vomit. It comes out before I realize what it is that I've said. And it's not until later on that I've walked away from that conversation and I've gone home, I've thought about it, and I've gone, hang on, I've agreed to something that I had no idea what they were talking about. Why did I do that? So, I think employers need to understand that we're not being difficult. We're not trying to, upset them or anything. I mean, quite the contrary. I'm a massive people pleaser. So my first go-to word is, yeah, of course. But, I think they need to kind of take a step back and realize that in that situation, there's a good chance that we're masking. And there's a good chance that we are just saying yes to things to make it easier for them, not necessarily for us. So many people claim to know so much about autism, but seem to get things backwards at the same time. And I think that's just, I don't know whether it's a mix of ignorance, and not ignorance in a bad way, ignorance of they just simply do not know and they haven't been educated on it, because that's what ignorance is. Or whether it is them just kind of, going out of their way to make people uncomfortable. I doubt it's the second one. I think a lot of it comes down to a lack of education on what autism actually is and how autism presents itself in each individual. If you know anything about autism, one of the phrases you've probably heard is, if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. We are not one and the same. And I think so many people, especially employers, don't realize that. I've been compared to, like, this is an example. Oh, well, my son's autistic and you're nothing like him. Well, yeah, but your son's a 6-year-old little boy. I'm a 25-year-old woman. Of course, I'm nothing like him. We're at two completely different stages in our lives. How he is now might not be how he is in 20 years' time. There's people just seem to compare autistic people to each other, and I don't think that's the way to go about it. I think if employers want to hire a truly diverse team of people who are neurodiverse, they need to start listening to those voices. One thing I still see, and it drives us up the wall, is so many companies using the puzzle piece symbol for Autism Acceptance Month. And it's obviously just a case of virtue signaling, because if they actually knew anything about autism, they would know that the majority of autistic people hate the puzzle piece. We hate it. I had a tattoo of a puzzle piece years ago when I first was trying to understand what it was, and then I realized what it actually meant. And I was so ashamed because it was on my body now. So I went out of my way to get it lasered off and get a new tattoo over it, because there was no way I was having something so hateful on my body for the rest of my life. And I think people don't realize that if they don't do the research, if they don't take the time to speak to autistic people and to listen to what they have to say, they're going to get it wrong, and they're going to cause more harm than they are good. I understand that most people's intentions are good intentions. I don't think the majority of people are going out their way to harm autistic people. But I do think employers need to start listening to autistic voices instead of just assuming what it is that we need or want.
And I think you're absolutely right, Lauren. I think what you're talking about there is, be open to learning, but also be open to unlearning as well. So a
Yeah,
lot of this stuff is actually, let's unlearn some of the negative narrative we've been fed. And, I too had a cup 10 years ago with a jigsaw puzzle on. I no longer have that cup. We've got to unlearn, haven't we, and be open to that
absolutely.
concept. Definitely.
So many people, the things I've heard, Kerrie, some people have asked us what disease I have. Yeah, I know. Some people have praised me for being on the high end of the spectrum. And it's like, why are we still talking like this? I understand that in the grand scheme of things, autism is a newer concept for people to try and get their heads around. But autistic people have been around forever. We have always been here. And I think it's about time that people start taking notice of us properly, the way that we deserve to be taken notice of.
Couldn't agree more, Lauren. I could not agree more. So, Lauren, what are your plans for the future?
Well, my plans for the future right now, I'm actually getting married next year.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yeah, I've been engaged to my partner. It's actually been 7 years now since we started going out. So Yeah, we're getting married next year, so I've got a wedding to plan.
Yeah, so you're getting married. What are you going to be doing? Any more books? Any more talks? What's the grand plan?
So I've been invited to do another podcast as well, which is very exciting. The Northern Lass Lounge have invited us to be a part of one of their podcasts, which very excited about. I've also just recently started a tattoo apprenticeship.
Wow, that's a bit different. That's amazing.
Very different, but it is something that I have always been interested in, and it's something that I am absolutely loving. It is such a fun environment. There's so many different characters, the different clients you get to meet as well, and I'm learning so much. And I'm absolutely loving it.
And what about the world of autism and neurodivergence? What are your plans there? What are you hoping to achieve for autistic people?
I'm hoping to give autistic people who can't speak for themselves just yet a voice to be able to be heard through. You know, for me, for the longest time, I wasn't able to speak for myself. I always relied on someone else to do it for me because I was too afraid to do it for myself. And it's not until the past couple of years where I've kind of been able to find the courage to use my own voice. So if using my voice means that I'm able to give a voice to other people who aren't ready to do it for themselves just yet, then I'm going to do it. I've got so many workshops coming up as well. I've got different talks coming up. It's definitely not the last you've heard from me when it comes to autism and neurodiversity. I am still here.
Fantastic. Where can people find you then, Lauren? How can they get in touch with you if they wanted to?
So if they wanted to find me on social medias, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook. Instagram is lauren.eliz.artworks. You can find me there. That's where you'll find me the most often because Instagram is my favorite app. But you can also find me on Facebook as Lauren Osbourne Artworks as well. I update both of those pages really regularly as well. And if you wanted to get in touch, if you had an illustration, like you wanted doing a commission, a book, or you just wanted to chat to us more about neurodiversity, or if you have a project coming up, you can also find us on www.laurenelizartworks.co.uk, and you can find all my contact information there.
Well, Lauren, thank you so much for being a guest on our podcast. To people listening, definitely go and check out Lauren's work. It really is incredible. To all our audience, thanks for listening. If you've got any questions or comments about anything you've heard, please get in touch with us at info@ne-as.org.uk. You can also follow the North East Autism Society on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram or LinkedIn. The podcast This is Autism comes out each month and you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google or Spotify so you never miss an episode. Bye for now.